back to Touchdown, Week 16. It's getting really exciting here. We're getting down to the wire. As always, I'm your host, Joel Turpin, coming at you this week from Rubar in Vienna, Austria. My co-host, Katie Eichhorn, David Asselin, and Mark Bartman. Greetings. All right, well, just a quick recap. Let's get the bad out of the way from last week.
A lot of bad.
Cincinnati demolished Katie's beloved Browns, ruining the starting debut of Johnny Manziel. Not with us today, but Philly Chris's beloved Eagles suffered a similarly dispiriting home loss against their rivals, the Cowboys. I think Philly needs a few days to kind of come back from this, so he's taking some time. He's regrouping, see how he does. You know how it is. Beat him in basically every phase of the game. Other places, Kansas City had a nice win to stay in the playoff hunt. Is worth mentioning, whereas poor Miami basically fell off the face of the earth. Although theoretically they are still in the race. Mike wanted to point out. So yeah, there's a 13 game swing that has to happen, over the next few weeks to make things possible. But hey, Green Bay suffered a big, stunning upset to Buffalo. Jay Cutler played what might have been his last game as the starting quarterback for Chicago. He's been benched in favor of.
I don't even remember.
It was a second string guy 10 years ago for Notre Dame.
Somebody from The Sims.
Yeah. Anyway, it's bad, but New Orleans won, so they're definitely asserting themselves in the South. We'll see how that plays out. Eventually, they're going to have to play Atlanta, and one of those teams is going to have to win unless we have another tie, in which case, who knows? So that's most of the week that was. Denver beat San Diego too. Sorry, that was I guess a big one. So Chargers are looking bad, and we'll talk about how we did on our picks later. But until then, let's just jump right into the deep end. This week we're talking about quarterbacks. We've worked our way around to the big position, to the numero uno, the guys on the board that make it all happen. And we'd like to talk about the best of all time, the best current quarterbacks, what the position means, what the stats means. Katie's going to talk a little bit about what quarterback busts have come out in the last couple of decades, and I don't know. Let's let Dave kick it off a little bit. Let's let Dave talk about his top quarterbacks of all time.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Now my top quarterbacks of all time. This was tough. I mean, you can go back. I came up with about 50 names in about 5 minutes of who would Y.A. Tittle, Sammy Ball. I mean, Roger Staubach, Troy Aikman. I got number 5 as Dan Marino. And the only reason I got Marino because he does not have a ring, but the guy has 10,000 passing yards over anyone else close in the league. He blows everyone away. I think he played 16 seasons from the Dolphins. Anytime you ask a quarterback today and they have any questions or who influenced you, Dan Marino's name always seems to pop up. He was quick, he was possessive, and he passed it so effortlessly. Everybody wants his Dan Marino pass. And he actually, many games rode on his right arm through the Dolphins through the bad years, but he still managed to get those games won. Did he win ever any Super Bowls? No, but I don't care. Numbers cannot lie. He's being the elite of the elite. If Marino had played with the support of a Montana or an Elway in his later years at that time, who knows what the numbers can be. The fact that he's number 5 on my list keeps him down, a little bit down on the list because he didn't win a Super Bowl.
Okay. Who else you got?
Well, I got Peyton Manning as number 4, still playing today. I bounced Peyton Manning around a little bit because he's basically pedestrian in the postseason. He's 11-12, and whether you like it or not, outside of Marino on my list, and bling bling rings actually show you who's the boss.
I totally disagree with you.
We'll get into this. All that being said, the guy still has 5 MVPs, most valuable players. Like I said, postseason, won Super Bowl. His brother, who's not even on my top 25, has got more Super Bowl wins than he does. And I think Super Bowl
It is
does.
shocking to think
I
about
think
Eli
he
Manning
never-
that
And both
way.
of them actually, ironically, up against the Patriots, but we won't go into that.
Thank you very much. I just
Yeah,
wanted
yeah,
to know that.
Thought I'd beat you to it. Number 3 on my list, and also still playing, is Tom Brady. Yes, bias, yeah, could be, but it was just a few
No,
years
could
ago.
be.
You know, it was if you look back a few years ago, it was a lock-in that Brady would be the all-time that it ever was. 3 Super Bowls in 4 years, everyone talking about it. Over the past few years, this has kind of faded a little bit amongst the greatest of the NFL. But if you take in fact, he's one touchdown, a Wes Walker drop from winning, I think it was in Super Bowl 46, where it had 4 rings like Montana and Bradshaw. And if anything else, the guy is 148 and 43 in regular season. And those are amazing numbers
Big
as a
numbers.
starting quarterback. My second pick, and I think he's the fans' favorite, or at least mine, has to be Johnny Unitas, or Johnny U. Now, I'm probably the only guy in this panel outside our camera and Tommy, who's old enough that I've actually seen this guy play a football game. You guys thought Johnny U was a personal toilet? No. He was certainly not a poor choice for the number 1 Top Gun. The guy basically invented the 2-minute drill and perfected. Quarterbacks today still are based on how Johnny Unitas brought football out he started when there was no face mask, okay? And then he finished with the Colts when there was a face mask. The guy's a 3-time MVP, won the
You
championship.
finished with the Baltimore Colts?
Yes, he did. He's a 3-time MVP. No, he actually finished with
Did they already go to Indianapolis? I couldn't
No,
quite
no,
put
no.
the
No.
two-
He finished with
Still-
the Baltimore
yeah.
Colts. That's not that,
But
but
he
finished.
did. I think he had a couple of years at the end where he was with somebody else. But
That's okay.
Anyways, his elite. He played 11 seasons as elite quarterback, which is less than Tom Brady and my number 1 choice. He definitely with 3 MVPs, 2 championships, and a Super Bowl ring. He goes up there number 2 on my list. Last but not least, and many people might disagree with me, is Joe Montana. Joe Montana is the greatest quarterback to play the Super Bowl. He is the greatest quarterback to play the 49ers, who have a rich history in quarterbacks with Norm Van Brocklin going back. The guy was as cool as a cucumber when he played football. The game always seemed to slow down for Joe Montana. Understand, there was no challenge too tough for Joe Montana. And he was being named 8 Pro Bowls, threw for more than 40,000 yards in his career. He still owns the passing record at 112.4 passer rating. Putting all these career milestones aside, if you remember Montana, I don't know most of us members played, no moment was too big for Joe Montana. He just always seemed to step up. He kind of reminds me, I'm being a little biased, of Tom Brady right now, but just there's no moment. Joe Montana just seemed to get up there and just know how to win. And I'm going to have to throw in one break for Chris. I told him I'd tip my hat to Randall Cunningham since he's not here. I actually wore the jacket and the tie for our colleague Philly Chris. He's having fun in Poland. You know, Randall Cunningham is not on a lot of people's list, but people forget he is the forefather for people like Russell Wilson, Michael Vicks, and even Tony Romo. The guy bringing the mobility and position, like the last person to probably do that was Francis Grant Tarkington.
yeah,
So.
if we were doing a list of most entertaining quarterbacks to watch play, Randall Cunningham would be possibly number 1 on my list. He'd be right up there. So, I love the fact that he punted for 80 yards in one game, and he would just have things where is he in the grasp? Is he not? Is he? Oh my gosh, he's throwing for another 80-yard touchdown out of the end zone.
He's the J.J. Watt of quarterbacks.
Yeah, he was crazy. He was an amazing
Wait, he's in the
talent.
stands. Wait, no, he's in. Anyway, I agree.
Okay, I think I may be the only other person with just a regular top 5 list ready to go here.
I've got a
Before
second
Mark
one, too.
gets to talking about.
You have a second top
Well, the one's
5.
playing today.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we can get to that later. But just
Oh my
talking
God,
historically.
I think 2
I
top
thought-
5 lists make a top 10 list.
Oh, that's what I thought he wanted.
There we go. Yeah. I'm going to go also backwards, and I've got varying amounts of information on these guys. My number 5, I'm bringing in Otto Graham from the Cleveland Browns back in the day, and
sure
you know, much like at least a couple of guys on my list, I don't actually have the chance to watch Otto Graham play. Obviously, I've seen some film. You know, this guy was the original winner. You know, he came into the league and basically took the Browns to championships every year he was there almost. I think he had one loss in the championship game, and the rest of the years he was just...
It's the last time
were
the Browns
unstoppable,
ever
yeah.
went to the
And,
championships
you know,
of anything.
Last week when my colleague Katie said Jim Brown's the greatest Brown of all time, you know, maybe because he doubles up with the name, I'm not sure, but...
You could make a case
you
for
can
Otto
make a case
Graham.
for Otto Graham. The guy was he was just a winner, and he retired a winner, and was amazing really for the age he was in. Now number 4 is Brett Favre, who is often overlooked when we talk about quarterback discussions. I'm not quite sure why, other than, you know, maybe it was him showing his junk to reporters on his iPhone, and maybe it was
The guy played 20 years.
yeah, maybe it was you know, the fact that he retired and unretired and retired and unretired and got a little crazy. I don't know. Whatever. This guy was the Iron Man of professional football. He set streaks for playing games. He had set streaks for yardage. He talks about Dan Marino's yards. You know, Favre was the guy that passed him on the career yardage attempt or yardage for his entirety of his playing career. Excuse me.
Yeah, so sorry, Joel, give that a break. You know, he took 4 years longer to
He did.
surpass Marino.
I'm just
know,
saying he's in the
forced
discussion.
Himself, he just wanted to get this yardage. He was greedy when it came to that.
Favre
And I think
closed the
the
deal.
fans deny him for that. All the Packers fans, they boo on
He's
Favre
not on
these
my
days.
list, dude.
Well, that's
Actually,
because he
I think-
left
no,
the
I think
Packers.
I think Favre is. I think the fans have come around in Green Bay on Favre, and I think it's a little more time.
Favre?
Which you can't.
Favre, Brett Favre. I think as more time gets away
He was
from
also
the circus around his retirement in his final years, you're going to see him coming back up the lists again as people look back
Green
over
Bay
his
fans
career.
are like Cleveland fans, and they're so they expect so much loyalty
never-
from their.
I'm sorry.
They expect so much loyalty from their players, and when he left and went to a rival,
Absolutely.
that killed them. It's the same as the LeBron story. Now, had he come back to Green Bay, he would have been welcomed like the prodigal son.
Well, they
again.
didn't want him.
They didn't.
No, because they had Aaron Rodgers. Of
Well,
course
then they had
didn't
Aaron
want that.
Rodgers. Now, if somebody, yeah. Anyway, okay.
All right, and so
Anyway.
before you come down to your quarterback number 3, let's stay at Brett Favre for a little while, because I mentioned early on Ben Roethlisberger to Joel, and he said to me, you know, he would not be on his top 10 at all. Well, I give you
Mine
that.
either.
Ben Roethlisberger has a better completion percentage than Brett Favre, yeah? He has a better interception percentage than Brett Favre, a better quarterback rating, and a better yards per game. So that makes him actually better than Brett Favre. And he doesn't make your list, you gotta tell me
He doesn't
why
make my
not.
list.
I'm not jumping on that bandwagon.
It's nice when you got the world at your fingertips
No, come on,
these
these are
days.
hard
I
stats.
actually work for
These
my
are hard
stats.
stats, guys.
Yeah, I will admit right now that my list is biased towards players that have finished their career straight up
Okay.
first off.
Okay, all right.
And but if I'm talking current quarterbacks, he would not be probably in my top 5 either. So
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
we can
Can we move
discuss
on?
Ben Roethlisberger a little more when we get to our current
Sure,
quarterbacks
all right.
specifically. You know, I watched Favre, and yeah, my list has a lot. I'll admit to go with just watchability and fun, and you know, there's a lot of things that go into my top quarterbacks, and you know, I people used to get annoyed when they would watch the announcers would just go on and on about how fun Brett Favre was. They would. You'd watch those Brett Favre games, and anybody that was for another team would be like, "Shut up already!" Yeah, okay. The guy's a gunslinger. Yeah, he throws it far and he takes chances. And you know, I can't help but remember when I first started watching Brett Favre in '92, and I had a colleague who was a Packers fan, and he hated the guy. He just hated him. He's like, okay, here's Brett Favre, and he's throwing touchdowns, but he's also throwing interceptions, and he's also just going and doing this thing, and he's not staying in the pocket as long as he should, and he's you know, he's unpredictable, and you know, those things can be drawbacks, but they can also just be fun as hell to watch. And you know, when it comes down to it, the guy broke through and finally was the one to break through that whole Cowboys-Niners logjam that everybody was so freaking sick of in the 90s, and finally broke through and brought another team into the Super Bowl out of the NFC. He played against the toughest competition in my mind. At the time, it was a constant uphill battle to get through, and when he did, it was a career-defining moment to break through and beat those guys. And if you ask me on another day, he might not be in my list because if you look at hard stats, they don't always just back it up. I get that, but
That was
there are lies. There are three kinds of lies: lies, damn lies, and statistics. And I fully roll with that.
Okay.
Brett Favre's my number 3.
That was a love fest equivalent to Dave's Gronkowski love.
Yes.
That was-
Gronkowski,
you
Gronk
just-
love.
Gronk,
I enjoyed
paper,
watching.
scissors, touchdown.
I enjoyed watching him. He wasn't a Chief, but I enjoyed watching him.
Guy knew his position, that's for sure.
And now we come to a guy that I absolutely freaking hate for very similar reasons, and you could also argue against him on stats-based merit, Mr. John Elway of the Denver Broncos. And I'm not going to talk about him much because I don't like to talk about him. Here's one for you, John. And but I watched him year in and year out. If there's any guy I would not want to be playing in a big game
At that time.
at that time,
Yes.
it was John Elway. He had the Chiefs' number. He had a lot of teams' numbers. He had the Browns' number.
Who didn't?
He did have some problems in the Super Bowl, but I think the fact that he got those teams to the Super Bowl is actually more impressive than anything because you say Dan Marino didn't have a cast. John Elway really didn't have a cast back in the day. Marino had better receivers than Elway did, if nothing else, during the 80s. And Elway still found a way to get to 3 Super Bowls with those mediocre
He got
teams.
those 2 wins late in his
Got
career.
the 2 wins late in the career.
With the talent behind him.
Puts him up over the top. There are days when I would argue that John Elway was the greatest quarterback of all time, if
But
I
not
was
today.
drunk enough. But
It's
not today.
just not
today.
one of those
we're
days.
sliding him in at number 3.
Well, guys, there's one thing. Last week on the show, when you talked about running backs, you forgot to mention Terrell Davis, who is to me the all-time running back, and he actually made it possible for John Elway to win the Super Bowl.
Huh?
So
If you're talking,
that's-
a short term, looking at 2 to 3 years, kind of who's the greatest quarterback over a short span, he would definitely be in the mix. I agree. My number 2, Dave's already talked about, Johnny Unitas. Again, I think Dave covered a lot of it, but really just the fact that he was so ahead of his time. In my mind, he's the first of the modern era quarterbacks.
Yeah, he kinda
about
changed it
20
up.
years before the modern era was ushered in. He was a winner and he was a stats guy. He held that record for most consecutive games with a touchdown for 50 years or something. It's just a crazy amount before it was finally beaten by Drew Brees here recently. Records like that are eventually going to fall, especially as the eras change and the
Significance.
supporting cast and the way the game's played have changed. But if you look at him compared to his peers, he was just miles ahead of them. Which makes it hard to put in my number 1 above him, but I do. Joe Montana, another guy that I watched at the end of his career more than the start, or let's say the second half of his career. I missed the early days, but we talk about guys that win with different teams. Joe Montana was always with the 49ers until the last 2 years of his career when he was with my beloved Kansas City Chiefs. But really, he was with different teams within the 49ers. I mean, the group that he won with in 1981 was significantly different than the group that he won with in 1985, was significantly different than the ones that he won with in 89 and 90. He had Jerry Rice for the last few years of his career, but earlier on, his wideouts were like Dwight Clark, who's famous more because he made a big catch than because he was one of the number 1 receivers of all times. He did have Roger Craig in the backfield, a running back, and that made a difference, obviously, later on in his career. But, again, he won without him. They had a solid defense. They had a great coach. But the consistent winner across all of those years was Joe Montana. And to me, I do put a lot of faith in the postseason things. I'm not going to put Eli Manning and Ben Roethlisberger up to the top of the current quarterback heap because of their 2 rings, but they're in the mix for Hall of Fame because of those, and without those, they wouldn't be. It's a big deal. It's a big deal that he was 4-0. It's a big deal that he was always clutch. He and John Elway were the guys that would bring the teams back in the fourth quarter like nobody's business. There was always a duel back and forth between them throughout the years as to who had the most fourth quarter comeback wins, and it would change one year to the
Montana
next.
was just like I said before, every time he played, the game seemed to slow down for him.
Yeah,
And, there was not a situation or a moment that he was ever phased by when he got out on the field.
As
yeah.
you've coined the term watchability already in the show, Joe Montana was extremely watchable.
Yes, he
And
was.
also,
Watchable.
yeah,
Is it from
I
a
say to you
girl's
now,
point of view, or-
since
Chewable.
okay, I was a little young to have crushes on quarterbacks in his era, but I
I
said
doubt
you've talked
that
also
very
about the strength of a supporting cast, and I said you can't overlook Jerry Rice in Joe Montana's later years, the significance
Of course.
of who you get to throw to. I think that makes people like Elway and Marino all the more impressive for the fact that they somehow still made it work.
It does, and it enters into the argument, and it's the reason that this topic is so fun to argue, because you can look at stats, you can look at eras, you can look at supporting cast, you can look at what were they doing with offensive systems back then. Joe Montana benefits from being in the West Coast offense before other teams were doing it. I mean, when Bill Walsh, the coach at the time, was implementing the West Coast offense, nobody else was doing this. This was unique. It had all the benefit of these little short dump off passes and these things that nobody else was doing in an era where we were transitioning to big guns and throwing it down the field. You had Kenny Stabler, for Oakland. You had
Lefty.
Dan Fouts in San Diego. You had Dan Marino airing it out. Joe Montana was over here doing something totally different that worked and helped. So that's another argument.
See, I got an interesting point on that, because to me, Joe Montana can be very much compared to Tom Brady. And
Yes.
what I see is in the Patriots and the 49ers back then, they didn't build their team around their stud quarterback, but they were worrying about the entire team, getting a collective together.
Yeah.
Yep.
Whilst on the other hand, when we'll talk about Peyton Manning, it's more like, well, we have to focus on Peyton Manning and give him the weapons. So I think that's
It
the
is.
difference
It is
on
a
that
discussion. Yeah, absolutely. Because and we can see, to my mind, which way works better. Because you got seven rings on one side, and then if you throw in Dan Marino, who they also obviously did that with, because Don Shula, the coach of the Dolphins, basically chucked what he had been doing for 20 years to focus on a quarterback, and it didn't work.
one. Exactly. Yeah.
It got them to one Super Bowl and they didn't win it.
It didn't work for
didn't
Manning
work.
either,
And
so-
it didn't work for Manning. So it's
Good point.
interesting
I'm-
to see that. If we're talking
Yeah.
top coaches and we're talking or top coaching schemes or whatever, which might be some fun topics,
The
that's
2014
an interesting.
Arizona
I'll-
Cardinals, maybe.
I'll hit
Interesting argument.
on the Manning thing a bit when I talk about my Tim Tebow discussion.
So anyway, that's my top 5. To run it down again, we got Otto Graham, Brett Favre, John Elway, Johnny Unitas, Joe Montana.
No Marino.
No Marino.
No Marino. Oh my
You know what,
God.
Marino-
He's in there.
That's
He's
what
in.
every kid
But
wanted to
if
do.
you go
No
top
rain.
10, he's in
No
there.
rain.
But he's
Okay.
not in the top 5. So.
Well, at least
Marino.
to me, I have to make a difference, and I have to go against Dave. It's not all about the rings and everything.
Hey, he's
Uh,
number 5.
I know. I have Dan Marino on number 5 as well, for all the reasons these guys said. Plus, his performance in Ace Ventura was absolutely top notch. So
Yeah, see, I forgot to factor that
I
in.
gave
He might
him
have
number
bumped
five.
that auto. So
It's a great film, by the way. My girlfriend doesn't understand it.
Then my number 4 is Joe Montana. You guys summed it up. The one thing that is really to mention there, in his 4 Super Bowl appearances, 11 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. That is impressive.
And 3 MVPs.
So,
yeah,
so that is my number 4. And then my top 3 of all time are actually current quarterbacks, just because the stats prove it. And I know the game has changed and we find stats, varieties. We can say, the best third down completion rate, how many times did he enter the end zone, and whatsoever. But to me, the facts, or the 4 guys, or the 4 keys that make the difference, is the completion percentage, because that stays the same with over the decades. Then we have the interception percentage, that stays the same as well, whether it was more passing or less. And of course, what counts as well are the yards per game. So I have Tom Brady ranked number 3. He is the guy who threw the least interceptions out of those 3 in his career, has the best interception percentage. My number 2, and I don't know why anybody mentioned him, of all time is Drew Brees. he's still the all-time leader in completion percentage.
I had him
And-
shortlisted, but just
No, guys, that
I think it's this season has overshadowed our.
maybe, but
maybe
you know,
that, you know. He has an outstanding quarterback rating,
Yes,
better
yeah.
than Brady's.
Yeah.
Yes,
And then, of course, my top guy is still Peyton Manning. You know, he was injured 4 years ago, and ever since he's back, he seems to be better than he was before. And he proves it every season. He's, I don't know, holding how many records. He's having the most yards in history at the moment. Yeah, most touchdowns in history. He just finished this last season with 26 touchdowns, something like that. I think he's just impressive, and it's great to watch him.
Yeah, I really consider Drew Brees, but he's like one of those prize fighters that goes down a couple times and he gets back up, but he doesn't actually win the fight. Do you know what I mean? He's very, very good. He's like a Norton. You know what I mean? He won it once, and he's very good, but he just never got to that pinnacle again.
The one thing you mentioned
He's
earlier
scrappy
on,
somehow. I don't know.
Dave, you said Dan Marino's arm and the way he throws
He
it,
just
you know,
made- but
that
I
is
think Joe
Drew
Hurley-
Brees' accuracy.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. His accuracy is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Well, Drew is actually, he's one of my favorite players in the NFL to watch
Yeah.
in the last decade. I've enjoyed, and he's one of my favorites. He'll be in my top for the current guys. But yeah, I don't think, unless he finds a way to win a couple of more postseason runs, and unless the team gets back to playing well, I don't think he's going to end up being looked on as being one of the best of all time, which is too
It's
bad because I
unfortunate.
like
It's
him.
really
Yeah, I like him
unfortunate.
better than I like either of the other two guys that that we're talking about here. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. And speaking of, I think since Katie doesn't have a top 5 of all time, we'll do disappointments in a few. Let's just continue the talk. Let's talk about the current guys. Mark, why don't you expand on we've got your top 3, obviously, current guys, or unless you want to adjust it a little bit.
Well, not really, no. I'm perfectly happy. Number 3 is Brady, and the one thing I'd like to mention, and it's really admirable, with 26 playoff starts, most for a quarterback in NFL history, and I think that proves again, you know, that Bill Belichick just built a team around him, not just around him, but focuses on the collective of the team over the years, and they just make it to the playoffs all the time, and that's why he's my number 3. I don't like him on stats so much, but yeah, my number 2 still Drew Brees. My number 1 Peyton Manning. I just love to watch him. The way he understands the game is just.
Yeah, that sounds good. Mark, do you have anybody for like your 4 and 5?
Well, my number 4 would probably be Andrew Luck, just because he is so young. He's only 3 years in the NFL, and he's playing darn impressive.
Okay.
And my number 5 would then be Ben Roethlisberger again, you know.
Okay.
And the one thing I gotta say, you know, Big Ben. I gave you all the stats beforehand, you know. 6 touchdowns in 2 consecutive games, you know, come on.
He was absolutely the best quarterback in the NFL for that fortnight. I'll give you that.
And for the week after too.
Maybe.
Yeah, okay.
But
just give me that.
the best, when I'm talking top 5, is consistency from day one.
So give us your top 5, Dave.
This is my top 5 that are playing right now, tomorrow. No, what is it? The day after tomorrow, and on Sunday.
Nobody tonight? Oh wait, yesterday.
Now wait a minute. I have.
Nobody from the Jags.
No. You know, I left out like the.
Can't live in there.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I left out people obviously like the Ohio boys, Dalton and Hoya. And
Fair enough.
Naturally, Alex Smith, Seattle's Russell Wilson might be a surprise to somebody. As of right now, this week, I've got number 5. I got Matt Stafford of the Detroit Lions.
Interesting.
Yes, he has proven that under good coaching and a healthy team, you can step it up to the elite, unlike his counterpart at Chicago.
Okay.
Although he is currently ranked number 8 overall, his leadership skills have matured. He threw some questionable passes at the beginning of the year. He's calmed down and looks like he can take the Lions deep for a run. Number 4, I'm kind of with you on this one. I've got Andrew Luck, but only because he's young. At number 4 on the list, but he's currently number 1 in 3 of the top positions right now in the NFL: passing yards, attempts, and touchdowns.
Yeah.
But
He could be a lot higher on this list.
But there is a downside to this. He also does have 14 plus interceptions, some very questionable play calling, and
I think that's a maturity issue right now. I think he's gonna be
Exactly,
much
but-
more interesting around season 5 for him.
Yeah, every
Sure.
time you get this guy mixed up with actually a Super Bowl contender like the Ravens or the Patriots, something, he seems to crumble a little bit. Maybe it's his offensive line. Maybe, like Katie says, give him a few more years under his belt. Number 3, playing right now, is Peyton Manning. And there is no doubting Peyton Manning's skills. And this year is no different, ladies and gentlemen. And with a defense reminiscing the old Orange Crush back in the day. And an offense that is explosive at any given minute. But I have seen sometimes this season, especially at crucial times, where the Peyton Manning of yesterday would have made that completion.
Yeah.
You see something a little off this year. I'm not taking anything away from him. He's Hall of Fame all
Give
the way.
the guy a
first
break.
year.
He's 40 years old.
But I'm talking right now. And is it really Manning's destiny to win another Super Bowl? Is it something that the football gods are wishing on or something like that?
Not looking that way at the moment.
Nah.
to me, but
Does he got enough of the right Omahas in him to go all the way this year? Questions like this.
Omaha.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's questions like these that will keep the Manning doubters alive and well in the NFL. Number 2, and to no one's surprise, I got Tom Brady. What is surprising, he's not number 1, but I told myself I would keep this unbiased, 100%.
How did you justify that with yourself? To just
Yeah,
go
it
down
was
to
tough,
number
but
two?
I am a professional,
And I
ladies
may
and
be curious
gentlemen.
about your number 1.
yeah.
I am a professional, ladies and gentlemen. All that being said, what can you say about Tom Brady that nobody else has said already? I can. Anybody that's watched the Patriots game in the last decade or so, unless you've been in a coma and living somewhere deep in Tibet, the guy will run up and down the field. He's always pumping up his players. It's not just his play on the field, it's his leadership that he carries with his team. Running around, trying to jive everybody up, looking for that high five that he never seems to get.
Yeah.
If you
He
look
wants
at-
some love. He wants to be loved.
And if you look up, there are several players right now in the NFL thankful for having played their career with Brady. Say what you want to say. And number 1, and my 3 younger brothers in New England, when you're watching later on this week, I said I'd say unbiased, it's got to go to Aaron Rodgers. I think pound for pound right now, this is the best quarterback in the NFL. Will we see another rematch? What happened the other week? I don't know. But Aaron Rodgers on pace for 4,000 yards this year, 40 touchdowns. He's the type of quarterback when we were kids, I says, I'm Marino, okay, and I'll be Montana. He's the type of quarterback that in every playground, every grade school, every high school, across America right now, somebody's out there saying, no, last week you were Aaron Rodgers. This
I'm
week
gonna
I'm
be Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
The guy is a leader. He's kind of like how do I write this? He's kind of like the Stonewall Jackson of the NFL. He can sit back and fire when he's ready, or he can charge at you like a ravaged redneck. I mean, the guy is an absolute beast at that position, and I unbiasedly had to pick him as number 1 right now in this season as it sits.
For me, Aaron Rodgers, I like him very much as a personality, but
Yeah.
he's very unpredictable. I said, okay, sticking with, fantasy football is all based on stats. And I said, having had Aaron Rodgers as a fantasy football quarterback,
Couldn't that be so bad? Or?
it can
It
be.
started roughly. It started
No,
roughly
it's
at the beginning of the
basically
year.
like watching the Browns. You never know what you're going to get from week to week. He's losing me points. No, then he's getting me 50 points. Then he is unpredictable, but somehow in the clutch pulls it out. I said,
Seems to win it.
I don't know. He's an enigma wrapped in a mystery with a beard.
Yes, he is. Anything
Yeah.
to add to that or disagree?
No. Actually, your list is very similar to mine. I got number 5, Andrew Luck. When I was looking at it, I was looking at not just who I'd want tomorrow, but like how people played over the last year or two. How would I view them in the next year or two? So in a fairly short time frame, but not just next week per se.
Gotcha.
Andrew Luck. He's there. A lot of it's on potential, but he's coming through. Last year he wouldn't have made my top 5. This year he squeaks in. Drew Brees is my number 4, and again I'm a little biased. I like the guy a lot. This is not his best year, but I still, if you had the chance to have him on your team and you don't have one of these other guys, I think you'd take him.
In a second, yeah.
He's an amazing talent. My number 3 is also Peyton Manning, and again, if I was last year, I'd probably have to put him at number 1. This year he's come down a little bit, especially in the second half of the season. I think, he may turn around and just turn it back on and throw for 6 touchdowns tomorrow. And is anybody going to be surprised? No, we're not.
No.
But at the moment, he's got enough that we're able to justify pulling him in at number 3. But really, it's almost a tie at number 2 with Tom Brady as well. I think they're fairly interchangeable. Tom had his weak games at the start of the season, and Peyton's had his the last few weeks. But Tom, at the moment, looks like the guy that's going to go out there for another year or two, whereas Peyton looks like the guy who might hang it up at the end of this season. Who knows? And then my number 1 is also Aaron Rodgers. If I was taking a quarterback for my team today, that's who I'd take. If I was playing a guy in the Super Bowl against that guy, that's who I wouldn't want to face. He looks like the best player on the field right now, maybe the best player in football. He's in line for another MVP season if J.J. Watt doesn't jump in and take it.
He's going to throw for 6 touchdown passes next week. You never know.
The Boston Globe did a survey. They said, "Who do you not Brady not to face in the Super Bowl?" It was hands down, 62%, hands down.
And the thing is, I have a tendency to root against the quarterback who takes over from another Hall of Fame quarterback. So I don't really like the fact that Indianapolis had Peyton Manning and now they've got Andrew Luck. I think that's BS because talking about the Chiefs earlier, Todd Blackledge, this guy I was complaining about, or I'm going to complain about here in a minute, was the last quarterback that the Chiefs drafted that won a game for them. That was drafted in 1983. So to look at it, to see teams just do that, to just reload, people hate. And I hate it.
You want to see some team have
I want
to
see
rebuild.
it down. I like it that the Dolphins had Dan Marino and then they had Bupkis. That's what I like. I like it when they've just got nothing for a little while.
You have to rebuild.
They need to rebuild. They don't get to reload. So I hate the fact that the Packers went from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers. It sucks, and yet the guy has won me over. He's that much fun to watch. He's a great quarterback, and he's my top guy. Katie, did you have a weigh in on the top 5 right now?
I wouldn't have anything that I would throw extra in the mix. I might reorder your top 5s, but I don't think I have anything extra new.
Not one to throw in.
I'm not putting in Johnny Manziel.
Not Johnny Manziel yet. Okay, give him another year or so.
I don't even want to give him another game right now. But okay, fine.
Johnny Pee-wee football.
Yeah.
Oh, this is just painful to watch. But nonetheless, there we go.
Okay, now we're gonna take a moment, and it sounds like we got a natural transition here to let Katie talk about some of the top 5 QB disappointments of all time. I think she's focused mostly on the recent past. I might throw another one in afterwards, but we'll let her take these.
Well, actually, my 5th place goes to a veteran, and it's actually more of a shout out to my dad. I'm going to give a little personal anecdote about this. I've looked at quarterbacks based on Heisman Trophy winners, first picks overall that turned out to be a bit of a bust. And place number 5 goes to Steve Spurrier. Now, this is personal because my dad brought me up to hate Spurrier with a vehement passion, coach of the South Carolina Cox, appropriately. And this goes to a story, New Year's Day, South Carolina versus Michigan. Who do I hate more? It's a big toss-up. My dad certainly hates Spurrier more. And
you hate Cox?
I didn't say that. I said I hate Steve Spurrier. Moving forward, post-game interview, we've got Jadeveon Clowney and the hit of this, the whole bowl day, if not
That's
for the last 10 years in college football. Shh, Dave. Shh. Anyway, my dad's flicking through the channels, ABC, NBC, ESPN, everybody's got the post-game interview with Spurrier. And my dad's sitting there and his grouchy old manness just turns and says, "Will somebody just shove a dick in his mouth?" To which my mom, my husband, and I all go,
I just said doesn't matter.
Then he turns off the TV, throws the remote, and goes for a walk. So, Steve Spurrier, anyway, to give you some facts about him, played 10 seasons in the NFL. In the late 60s, he was the Heisman winner in 66. He had 26 games as a starting quarterback in San Francisco. Threw for a total of 6,000 yards in his career. Not really that impressive. However, he started 106 games as a punter.
Okay.
Nice.
Little did you know.
Yeah.
Really, this isn't so much as a disappointment as I just really hate Steve Spurrier, so I'll move quickly forward. I'm going to throw in Tim Tebow at number 4.
Okay.
Namely,
Big
for the
bust.
amount of potential that everybody saw there that just never came into fruition. And when we were talking earlier about basing a team around a quarterback, Denver clearly did that when Tim Tebow comes in, brings them the AFC West title in that amazing overtime game against Pittsburgh, and then they trade him. What? Okay, if you get the chance to get Manning, okay, maybe, but I said, at that time, I found this to be the most questionable idea from management of all time, because I said, you've got a player in Manning that's coming off multiple spinal injuries. He's one bad hit away from being paralyzed. You take a risk on a guy in his high 30s for a highfalutin kid that's gotten you somewhere that you haven't been since 2011. Well, clearly they made the correct call, and now Tim Tebow's been floating around all over the place. He's an exceptional athlete that could probably play a variety of positions, but as a quarterback, never really got his place in the NFL. I also hate USC. We're just gonna add to the list of teams I really don't like. So, in fact, USC had a kind of run for Heisman trophies, and Matt Leinart was one of their guys in this time. They had Carson Palmer, Matt Leinart, and Reggie Bush that got 3 within 5 or 6 years of each other. This was an era. This was back in the give me Seattle's coach's name. Pete Carroll days
Yes.
at USC when he was really running a powerhouse. They've since vacated a lot of championships due to infractions, as it were. Matt Leinart gets drafted, only ever throws 2 touchdown passes, spends most of his time behind someone else. Comes in the clutch, doesn't perform in the clutch, and he was all over Sports Illustrated, probably because he's tanned and toned and went to USC. He's nice to look at, but do you want him as your quarterback? Not so much. But he was all over lists to be a big thing in the NFL. He sat behind Derek Anderson in the NFL at the Cardinals, then sat behind Schaub. He never got anywhere, despite being the 2004 Heisman winner.
Okay. I think nobody else. Do you guys have any busts to mention?
No.
All right. Well, I'm going to take just a moment to talk about my boy Todd Blackledge, who I briefly mentioned again. He was the last.
Shall we put him in at 2.5?
Yeah, he's right up there. And the problem with Todd Blackledge, you've seen other guys go really high. She didn't mention Jamarcus Russell. He was the first overall pick for Oakland a few years ago. That's obviously got to probably rank in the top of all time busts, and he was absolutely horrible. Part of the reason, though, that Todd really should be in any list is who was picked after him. I mean, if you've got a draft and you've got to go for a quarterback and you take Ryan Leaf and then, whatever. If Ryan Leaf had gone first and then Peyton Manning had gone second, for example, then he would, there'd never be any argument for the rest of all time that he was the worst. That's part of the problem here. Todd Blackledge was part of the 1983 class of quarterbacks, which is often mentioned as one of the premier crops of quarterbacks ever to come out of college. And it had Hall of Famers in it. Top overall pick was John Elway. The, I believe, 19th pick was Dan Marino. You also had Jim Kelly in there in the first round. All 3 Hall of Famers. Sandwiched in between them at number 7 was Todd Blackledge for the Kansas City Chiefs. Yeah, he was a Chief for 5 seasons. He started, about 15 or 16 games total. Was replaced mid-1986, says he had a 3-3 record, and that was almost all with defense and special teams he was playing against. Him. Replaced by a journeyman quarterback named Bill Kinney, who went on to lead the Chiefs to their only playoff appearance of the 1980s, which they lost to the Jets in overtime, if I remember right. Yeah, it was bad, and yet it's still the last time we drafted a quarterback that won a game for us. So he not only killed his career, but he basically killed the idea of the Chiefs ever drafting a quarterback again, apparently. So that was impressive. So yeah, don't want Dan Marino, don't want Jim Kelly. We'll take Todd Blackledge every time. Yeah, that puts him on my top of my bust list.
Well, I've got a tie for first place, really, and also referring to my team's inability to draft a quarterback. Now, Will Johnny Manziel do something for the Browns? It remains to be seen. But the Browns went ahead and made this really revolutionary pick in 1999 to take, with the number 1 pick, to take Tim Couch out of the powerhouse college football school of the University of Kentucky.
Hello?
He played 5 seasons with the Browns. Do you know what? Despite being disappointing, I said, can you fault Tim Couch, really? Or can you just fault him playing for the Browns? 11,000 passing yards in 5 seasons, which is moderately impressive for playing for the Browns. He's still the pass percentage completion leader for the Browns. Doesn't speak highly to him or my franchise. But according to SI and Sports Illustrated and ESPN, he is the biggest draft bust of all time.
Wow.
I disagreed with them and went with Fox Sports' biggest draft bust of all time.
Oh, Fox, it's got to be correct then.
Yeah, it's Fox News.
No, it's Fox News.
That's
Sorry.
where I get all my
It's
factual
gotta be,
information.
absolutely.
But,
Let me put down my
okay,
papers.
we're bringing up Ryan Leaf. You've already given him a
love it.
little bit of a
Digress,
mention.
yeah.
But talking about disappointing, really, so many hopes riding on this guy, thinking he's the next best thing. He played for Washington State, 2nd overall pick in 1998. Played with the Chargers for 2 seasons, played with Dallas for 1, threw 14 touchdowns to his 36 interceptions, 3,600 career yards in the NFL. Was arrested, however, more times than he started games since then.
Yeah,
It's a fun fact.
What I remember about the whole Ryan Leaf thing was it was one of 2 times in my memory where leading up to the draft, you had this argument going on where they're saying, hey, we're going to take, there's 2 can't-miss quarterbacks in this draft. Who's going to take the first one? Who's going to take the second one? The first one I remember was back in the early 90s when it was Drew Bledsoe and Rick Mirer. And Seattle ended up taking Rick Mirer, and Drew Bledsoe went to the Patriots. Bledsoe obviously had a much better career than Rick Mirer.
Not much.
Although it wasn't quite as big a mismatch as this one, where Peyton Manning went on to have possibly the best season of any quarterback, or best career of any quarterback ever, according to one of our colleagues. Definitely in the discussion for one of the best quarterbacks of all time, and Ryan Leaf was just absolutely horrible. And not only that, to make it worse, San Diego traded up 1 spot. They gave away like 3 or 4 draft picks to move up 1 spot from 3 to 2 to take him. So they basically sabotaged their entire franchise on this guy, and so he's got to take the top spot.
Yeah.
I think.
Massive.
So yeah, the lists go back and forth about which was the worst pick, but I'd say given Ryan Leaf's, Tim Couch is more not all his fault. Ryan Leaf's pretty much all the blame rests on him.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, well, does anybody else have anything on quarterbacks there? Mark, did you have something you wanted to throw out, or are we?
No, I'm good for now.
Okay.
Are you sure?
Do you want to argue Ben Roethlisberger?
Yeah, I was just saying,
No,
I've been
I'm
Roethlisberger
good with
about
Roethlisberger.
at least 5
I
minutes.
make my point,
Yeah.
He's standing big and tall.
He's standing big and tall,
He's
not
only in
moving a
his
bunch,
11th
and
season,
chucking it out.
Give him another 4 or 5
hey,
years.
if he ends up with 4 or 5 Super Bowls in the end, he'll probably win us all over.
You
I'll tell
already
you what.
said it's not all about the rings, So.
Yeah.
You said it wasn't all about the rings. I
No,
think Dave was firmly it's all about the rings.
Yeah,
So-
It
That's what I'm
is.
saying.
But
I
that's
mean,
Dave.
like
Then
I
the-
said off camera to Katie earlier, can you imagine Michael Jordan not winning a championship? He would be like what?
Yeah, he'd be like
Kyle
Dominique.
Drexler.
He would be Dominique
You know,
Wilkins
yeah.
at that point or
Ooh,
something.
Can you
Yeah.
imagine Jordan?
that's a throwback right
Yeah.
there.
Clyde Drexler, the
Yeah,
exactly. Of the
Drexler.
Supersonics, I think it was.
Although
I
admittedly,
thought he played for the
we talk
Trailblazers.
basketball. In basketball, it's
Maybe
more
you're
about
right,
the
maybe you're right.
individual because they have more control as one of 5 as opposed to.
Yeah.
But quarterback's the one side
I'll
that
give
it,
you another
it goes
one.
on.
If Wayne Gretzky would have never won the Stanley Cup, he would still be the best of all time.
You know, in his later in his
There you go.
career, they just called him the really good.
Bobby Orr. I don't know. There'd be arguments.
We've
at that point.
digressed into a number of other sports
Yes.
discussions.
Yeah.
Thank
Bobby
you for
Orr.
staying tuned.
The best defensive man ever to play hockey, Bobby Orr.
All right, we got to do part 2. We're going to take a little faux break because we don't have time to do anything else. So we'll be right back with you in a moment. All right, we're back for the second portion of Touchdown. Won't be quite as long as the first, hopefully. We're going to talk real quick about the week that was and the week that is. Just want to recap our picks from last week. Unfortunately, our picks for Mark were a little made up, so we won't really be able to count his stunning winning percentage that he would have had otherwise. But, we had San Francisco at Seattle. Seattle won. We all picked Seattle. Yes. We had Denver at San Diego. Denver won. We all picked Denver except for Philly Chris, who's not here to defend himself. He went with San Diego, so we have one loss on his side. Dallas at Philly. We all picked Philly. Not such a good call. Dallas won it handily. They trounced them. Cincinnati at Cleveland. We all took Cleveland. There are some discussion as to whether or not those were sympathy picks for Katie, but we all managed to convince ourselves by the time the show was over, and then Cincinnati went out and destroyed our thoughts on that one.
Yes, they did.
And lastly, Miami at New England. New England won. We all took New England. We were a very tight unit last week. We all thought the same way. So
Christmas solidarity.
When it was all said and done, Joel, Chris, and Katie went. Joel, Dave, and Katie went 3-2. Chris went 2-3.
And I did.
And I'd have to look at how you did, but I'm sure that had you been here, you'd have been 5-0.
5-0.
Yeah, pretty sure at home sitting there picking you was 5-0. So bouncing right into it, we got the upcoming games for the week. I'll kick it off. Kansas City at Pittsburgh. Once again, I get a chance to talk about my Chiefs because once again they're in a game that's virtually a must-win for both teams. It's it's not necessarily going to call whether or not those teams make it to the playoffs, but let's put it this way: you don't want to be the loser and then try to make it because the scenarios become nearly impossible. You're looking at tiebreakers. You're looking at all sorts of other things. So let's consider it a must-win game for any realistic playoff hopes. And I've got to say, I don't like this matchup at all for Kansas City. I'm not playing possum. I'm not just voting against the team to hope and work some karma the other way. I just really don't like this matchup. Kansas City recently has been giving up tons of yards on the ground. I believe they're in the top 5 yards allowed in the last 5 weeks on the ground. Denver was running all over. Everybody's been running all over them recently. Pittsburgh, of course, has one of the premier ground games in the NFL this season with Le'Veon Bell. And, Big Ben can wind it up and throw for 6 touchdowns when he feels like it. Most weeks he doesn't, but when he does, boom, 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 there they are. They've got a great receiving core, a young receiving core. Their defense is very suspect. I do think it's going to be a close game. I think if Kansas City is smart, they keep it on the ground as well, and we have a low-scoring game that stays close and, comes out at the end. If the game was in Kansas City, I might give the nod to the Chiefs, but it's in Pittsburgh. I think when it's said and done, they're gonna pull it out. And really, my best hope for the Chiefs as a fan is that the Pittsburgh team overlooks them a little bit. It's not likely to happen, but they've done it a lot of times this year. They've gone out and laid eggs, against Jacksonville or Tampa Bay. They do have a tendency to play down every now and then, and if Pittsburgh goes out and plays poorly, then Kansas City under Andy Reid has shown that they'll find a way to take it. But if Pittsburgh goes out, if they both go out and play their A games, I think the Steelers are going to win it. So that's unfortunately what I got to call.
Simply for the fact that I don't want the Steelers to win, I'm going against perhaps my better judgment, and I'm going to pick Kansas City and Jamal Charles to rack up some big yards against that suspect defense. Yeah, it's not a particularly wise call, probably statistically. It's just because I want it to happen.
Fair enough.
Virginia, is there a Santa Claus? I'm really hoping there is, and he's going to bring Kansas City away. In a close game, though, I'll give you that.
All right.
Hey, no doubt, I see the Steelers winning this game. Sorry, Joel.
But fair enough.
Kudos to you and the Big Ben fan over here. This is late in the season. Big Ben wasn't on my top 10 list or my top 5 or whatever. But it is Pittsburgh Steelers. It is Big Ben Roethlisberger playing, and it is late in the season, and they are playing in Three Rivers. And like Joel said, they've haven't been a little not playing up to their top right now. Outside of probably one of the best running games, outside of that, the Chiefs really don't have anything. I see Steelers winning this game.
Okay. Well, I think, guys, Joel gave you the perfect summary of the game. But taking a look back at the last couple of weeks, if you guys want to go out and bet, you always go against my picks and you win money. So, and in order for the Dolphins to keep their playoff hopes alive, I need the Kansas City Chiefs to win this one, and I go for the Chiefs.
Okay, well, I'm not sure that these are the best reasons to make picks, but hey, when it's all said and done, that's
Given
what
this
we got.
season in the
Philly
NFL,
Chris?
I think tossing a coin is as good a thing as any.
Philly Chris also picked Pittsburgh to win the game, so that's where we are with him. Up next, Katie is going to talk about the Denver at Cincinnati game.
This could be very interesting. It's a game that Cincinnati has to win if they want to keep pace in their, well, they're ahead, keep pace, but keep their spot. They won handily over the Browns last week. Denver's already clinched its spot in the playoffs. All they're playing for this week is the possibility of a bye week in the first round of the playoffs. Cincinnati doesn't look great at home, oddly enough. Cincinnati wins much better on the road, or plays much better on the road, it seems. And Denver plays really well on the road. It's a very odd matchup of things happening in this game.
Prepping for that home playoff loss.
You want to be
Just kinda
Cincinnati? Yeah,
getting
exactly.
out there.
Andy Dalton starting
We'll be
early
ready,
because Cincinnati in the last 5 weeks is 1-3-1 at home.
Okay.
Odd. Anyway, they're unpredictable. However, when we're talking about great rookies this year, Jeremy Hill came out and just put on a show last week. And he's really fun to watch. And if he can, between Bernard and Hill, keep things moving, Cincinnati's got a shot at this. However, Denver's running game is also quite interesting to watch with C.J. Anderson. I think the game is going to be played largely on the ground, as Dalton looks a little suspect, a bit shaky. I'm gonna pick Denver. Only if to have Pittsburgh lose and Cincinnati lose somehow possibly puts Cleveland back in something.
Sorry,
I think
there's
it's
no
gone.
more
I
Cleveland
think
out
it's
there.
there's I'm talking to you, Satan. Somehow something's got to happen. I say Denver pulls it off at Cincinnati.
Okay.
Boy, I can't add much to that, Katie. Denver wins in Cincinnati. Oh, over.
Okay, there you go.
Well, I think the only chance the Bengals have, if Peyton is crazy enough to do a lead block and hurts himself in the first quarter, then the Bengals might have a chance of winning this game. But other than that, Demaryius Thomas is at the top notch at the moment. Even if Peyton is not playing quite as well as last year, Julius Thomas is back healthy again. They got the running game with C.J. Anderson, and they'll win by far.
Okay. Philly Chris also went with Denver. Let's just go out on a limb here. I'm winging it this week.
Devil's advocate
Let's
says.
devil advocate. Let's, I did watch that running game. I did watch them demolish the Browns last week. I was impressed.
Yeah, the line
I-
poked holes, but that was the Browns.
I'm going to go with Cincy at home. I like to think that they're going to find a way to sneak into the playoffs and break everyone's hearts there like they have been in recent years. So
Welcome to the
this
jungle.
This is what I
Let's
see
see.
happening. Okay, I got to admit, I'm not sure which of you is prepped for which games. We got 2 games left coming up here to talk about: the Seattle-Arizona game and the
Good
Indianapolis-Dallas game. Mark, what are you ready to talk about?
I'm talking about the Arizona against Seattle game, and I'd like to rub in that the Dolphins will win against the Vikings. But anyways, Arizona, Seattle. Arizona is tied leading the NFL in record 11-3. Unfortunately, after losing Carson Palmer, they lost Drew Stanton last week, so they have to start Ryan Lindley as quarterback.
Who?
If you guys haven't heard of him, he played 6 games in 2012, but unfortunately he threw 7 interceptions, not a touchdown, and only 700 yards in those 6 games. That's not really impressive, so Arizona has to rely on their strong defense, but Seattle has a strong defense too, and Seattle has the weapons on offense too, and I think Seattle can win that easily.
Yeah, it's really a shame that we're not looking at the matchup earlier in the year
In
with
the
Carson
season.
Palmer. We've had 2 games now, or we'll have the second game where, Arizona's running at partial
Speed
strength,
as
partial
Yeah.
speed, and it's too bad because that was setting up as a really exciting finish to the season, and now it looks like I agree that Seattle's going to win it. Philly
Yeah.
Chris has got Seattle winning it, and it's all due to injury.
I think
I don't necessarily disagree. I necessarily don't agree. At one point in this season, are we going to start believing in the Arizona Cardinals? Really, the number one defense in the league right now. At what time are we going to start believing? And not only that, Bruce Arians and the entire Arizona coaching staff, who week in and week out manage to come up with the right special team play or the right takeaway at the right time, and they win games. They are playing in Arizona. I disagree. I think Seattle is more behind the 8 ball than Arizona is right now. Whoever wins this game has if Seattle wins, they sweep Arizona, and that plays volumes going into next week and the
course.
end of the season. But Arizona really, really wants to win this one at home.
Of course they do.
Seattle won the last 4 games, so they are on the streak. Arizona
The
is
streaks
sort of
come to a
always
halt.
Yeah.
They get away with the win, but no.
Yeah, if
Sorry.
Carson Palmer was there, it might be different. Even Drew Stanton,
Yeah.
but
My Buckeyes won a Big Ten championship, 59-0, with a third string quarterback.
Katie has
any chance to
I'm
plug,
going- I'm
any
going-
chance to plug the Buckeyes.
I'm going with that.
But still, it can be done. But I still pick Seattle. Sorry.
I'm going with the Cardinals with the upset.
Yeah,
Probably
I
crazy.
think how many interception, fumble returns you can have, kickoff returns for touchdowns that the defense
the
can score
Steelers did it back in the-
21 points, then probably to 17 to win.
I think the
game.
problem is that they need that. In order to win, they need a fluke play or 2 to go their way, and it's really hard to count on that. So if you're just coming down to picking who you think's going to win, the obvious choice is Seattle in this game. But hey, I'd love to see it.
I'd love to
It's
see-
more
I'd love to be
exciting.
wrong
It's
in
more
this
fun.
one, man.
It's
You know what? Seattle's got to go into next week. Seattle's got to go into St. Louis and win. And St. Louis they've beat them once already. They're
They've
not
turned
a
into a
pushover, and
defensive
they have got
powerhouse,
probably
yeah.
one of the biggest defensive powerhouses right now, the Jeff Fisher. Arizona has it easier, I think, by going into San Francisco and playing the 49ers.
yeah.
Call out the way you want. Seattle probably needs to win this, but I got a gut feeling the Cards pull this one out in the desert.
Okay.
All right. Well, it'll be exciting one way or the other, won't it? Dave, Indianapolis, Dallas.
Boy, this is one of those games of the week, isn't it? Dallas is coming off a huge win in Philadelphia last week against the divisional rival and taking sole place in that division. Unfortunately, they're playing at home because Dallas is 6-0 on the road right now. They play terrible at home right now.
It's that big screen. It distracts you.
Maybe it is the eye of God. What do they call it? What,
The eye of God, I
The
think
eye
that's
of
what
God
they're
or something
calling it.
like this. All that being said, Tony Romo has silenced the naysayers and has become a December quarterback in the NFL. He's already won 2 games in December. My God, pinch me right now. And Des Bryant actually schooled the entire Philadelphia secondary last week. I see the Cowboys winning a good one. Now, the Colts barely got by the Texans last week at home. They haven't showed me much of that breakaway you see the team, despite having the NFL's #1 quarterback. And they play average at best, especially when they're playing away. I see Dallas winning this one big at home because they just want it more.
No, I'll disagree with you on
I
that.
knew you would.
No, I think if you take a look back at the last couple of weeks of what Indianapolis did, especially the Browns game, they were trailing for a long time, but in the end it was 1 point, they won the game, and they'll be able to do the same in Dallas, especially Dallas is an away team at the moment. They don't play too well at home. I don't know what it is. To me, that entire stadium is a failure of design. That eye of the God. It lets too much sunlight in, and at the end, in the fourth quarter, all of the players play in one direction, have all the sun in their faces, and yeah, I don't know if that's an advantage for Romo or for Andrew Luck, but
Running back Murray is still questionable for playing the entire
It's
game.
not-
That makes a
But
difference.
I think the way they coach up at that offensive line that Dallas has, and I've mentioned this before, arguably the best in the NFL. They can go with running backs Joseph Randle and Dunbar and still open up some passing for Romo. We'll see. Romo's just absolutely just been a different quarterback the last month.
What you got, Katie?
I'm pulling on Cincinnati as well. I say
Cincinnati.
Cincinnati.
Indiana.
Yes, indeed. I'm going for.
Get out of
I didn't
that
even pick
division.
Cincinnati when I was
Get
talking
out of
about
that
the
division.
game. I'm going to go with Indianapolis away because Denver. Jeez. Cut. No, I'm going to pick
Dallas.
Indianapolis because Dallas looks terrible at home,
Yeah, they
and
have.
a
That's a shame.
questionable Murray
Yeah.
is. Yeah. No, I'm with you on Indy.
Okay. I'm going Indy. Let's see. What
call,
did?
Joe. Good
Yeah.
call,
Hey,
Joe.
I feel it strong right here, right in the heart. Philly Chris also went Indy, so I may be out of luck.
Of course he did.
Yeah. That's gonna hurt. Okay. Well, you know what? I just want to say one more thing because last week we did miss talking about some great running backs, and we don't have time to talk about everybody. I was just gonna list a few of the guys that I had on my when I was narrowing my list down from 20 or 19 or whatever down to 5. I looked at Sammy Baugh, Otto Graham, Y.A. Tittle, Bobby Lane, Johnny Unitas, Bart Starr, Terry Bradshaw, Roger Staubach, Dan Marino, John Elway, Steve Young, Troy Aikman, Brett Favre, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Drew Brees, Warren Moon, Franz Harkington. And, of course, Lenny Dawson from the Kansas City Chiefs. So I've got to throw that in there. So.
Do you know if Montana's played enough, he might even give Lynn Dawson the run for his money in KC.
Yeah, might have.
Montana.
Been there a little bit longer. Lenny's been coasting off that 1970 Super Bowl win for 40 years now. He's still a local legend. Still is on the sports guy on Channel 9. So yeah, we're ready to have a new person to crown. It's just not likely to happen anytime soon, unfortunately.
Not this year, anyways.
Anyway, thanks for joining us again this week. I don't know where we'll be next week or what iteration we'll have, but we enjoyed having you, and we'll see you again. Bye-bye.